Birmingham boy was calling right next to the car. And obviously he's called Blondie because he has that very light-colored mane. And Kay Lioness was wondering if male lions or lions with light manes are more likely to pass on the gene for or to produce white lions. So for those of you who might be joining us for the first time or aren't too sure exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about white lions, it is not an example of true albinism. So they're not completely lacking in pigment, but around the Timbavati area and occasionally in this area, we do get lions that demonstrate a leucistic sort of tendency. So they're very, very light in color, basically white, with blue eyes. Spectacular to see, very beautiful, but it is a recessive allele, which means that both parents have to be carriers of it, and your chance is sort of, I think it's somewhere in the region of 25% if you've got two parents who are carriers of the gene, that they will produce at least one cub that is a white lion cub. And I had a bit of a think about this because in terms of darker maned lions being less likely to produce white lions, I had to really think about. And typically what we understand of lion genetics, the darker manes tend to have genetic stock, however far back, that is sort of towards the Kalahari side, the desert side of things. And the lighter maned lions are the ones that are more naturally occurring towards East Africa and around this area. Now, as far as I know, there are no naturally occurring white lions really that seen outside of the Timbavati or the Sabi Sands area, as far as I know. And I'm talking about further west into the country. Now, the further west into the country you go, the more likely you are to see lions with darker manes. So I'm going to sort of put it out there, and it is a theory, it's not a definite answer, that lighter colored lions with lighter manes are probably more likely to produce white lion cubs than those with darker manes. But that said, it wouldn't be a strict rule. I'm sure there's always the possibility with darker colored manes. It is just something I'm putting forward as a theory. I'm not entirely sure, and I'd have to go and look it up when I get home. But that would be my suggestion. So really, really good question. Thank you for that. And we're going to continue our search. It doesn't look as though the Matimba males have emerged from their hiding place around Hoffman's and Chitwa Chitwa. They've been tucked away further south, away from those Birmingham boys. So for those of you who might be joining us for the first time or haven't been watching or missed out on the goings-on of the last few days, I just want to fill you in on a little bit because I know that there are some very concerned viewers wondering about that one particular Styx cub. But before I go into that, let's just do a little bit of background in case you've missed it. So in this area, there are two lion prides. The one is slightly split up, but essentially there are two lion prides, the Nkuhuma lions and the Styx lionesses. And there are two dominant male lions, the Matimba males. And they, in the past few years, have been the ones who have dominated this area, protected the lionesses, mated with them and fathered the cubs. However, recently, in the last few weeks, they have been very seriously challenged by a group of 5 young males known as the Birmingham boys. And to say that the Birmingham boys have been causing chaos is probably an understatement. About 2 weeks ago, they killed one of the lionesses from the Nkuhuma pride. They had a serious run-in and shouting at with the Matimba boys. And they, just in general, have been causing serious disruption. And it got to the point where they actually went south into Hoffman's property, and they killed 2 of the Styx female's cubs. She had 3, she now has 1 surviving. And Carol, you wanted to know what the gender is of that surviving cub, and I will tell you in a moment, just as soon as I've gone through this particular dip, just so we don't risk losing the answer. Carol, back to your question. You were wondering about the gender of that surviving cub. Now that Styx female did a fantastic job. She really apparently was reported to have fought incredibly hard against 5 young males. She really didn't stand much of a chance, but she did an extraordinary job in the fact that she managed to keep at least one cub alive and escape back to the relative safety of the Matimba males. We know he's fine. The Styx lioness did make it back towards further south into a more safe, secure area. She is going to have her work seriously cut out for her. Life is going to be very difficult for the next few months. She's going to have to be very, very careful what she does. And there is a very distinct possibility that if those Birmingham boys do really decide to lay down the challenge to the Matimbas, they might push south into that area, in which case she is going to have to take that cub and run, or there is a very, very distinct possibility that they will kill that cub too. And the fact that it is a male cub at this point is neither an advantage nor a disadvantage in terms of the actions of the Birmingham boys, because to lay down the challenge to the Matimbas, they might welcome back, and it appears that we are under attack from a serious influx of gremlins on this Friday morning. So we do apologize for that. Our tech geniuses are working on it as we speak. However, we do have a suggestion for some of you guys. For whatever your streaming platform is, use the auto settings or the lowest settings at the moment. It's just going to be your best bet for helping us defeat the gremlins this morning. So that would be a suggestion from us that you just switch across to some of the lower auto settings. So I'm still looping around very close to our eastern boundary. My end, or at least one of my destinations in mind, is Buffelshoek Dam, just to see if that leopard has been around the area and made any kind of appearance. So far, I'm not picking up on any tracks apart from hyena tracks, which seem to be everywhere on this reserve. They definitely move around a great deal. We were chatting a little bit about the difference between duiker and steenbok, and I've been desperately trying to look for a common or a grey duiker. And Ruth, in the UK, you've picked up on the fact that it's pronounced two different ways by different people. One is duiker, the other is duiker, and you were wondering why that is. And I think the most true explanation would be the fact that there's English people saying it and then Afrikaans people saying it, and it is an Afrikaans word. Now the UI in that particular instance, to the best of my knowledge as an English-speaking South African, in Afrikaans is pronounced oi, so duiker rather than duiker. It's not an I sound. But that's probably where most of the confusion comes in, Ruth. It's just English people trying to say what is essentially an Afrikaans word. So I'm sure you've all been wondering where Stef has disappeared off to. And I believe he is venturing for the first time, or for the first time for him anyway, into Arathusa to explore that side of our traversing territory. So for now, we are going to send you back across to him so that you can catch up with what he's been up to. So we were going to go back to Stef, but unfortunately Stef is somewhere in the gremlin fold area that is of Arathusa. We're struggling with the streaming issues, so we shall carry on with me instead, and hopefully we will find out at some point what Stef is up to. His missions around. definitely gone up my nose this morning. Might have been a fly. They are out in full force. Just going to double check that track quickly, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about the various antelope species that we have. And once again, it is a hyena. Actually, I have a question for you guys, and it's a bit of a quiz. It might be a difficult one for some of the new viewers. Can we get them from here, Andrew?
Possible.
So it is sort of directly into the sun. It's a bit tricky, but I'm just going to hop out. I have a quiz for you guys. So, I want to know from you what track you think this is. And the reason that I'm hopping out, I don't have my Leatherman on me. The reason I'm hopping out is so that I can give you a bit of a scale to the size of this track. Are we on this one?
Yeah.
Cool. So, I want to know what track you think this is. And just to give you a bit of a scale, there's the front foot here, the back foot here. I will tell you that I can see claw marks in the track, and I will also tell you that this back pad dips down on one side. So that is all that I'm going to give you. It is fresh. It is from sometime last night. So it's not from this morning. It is from last night, or maybe very, very early this morning, just to give you a little bit more of a hint as to what it might be. And it's actually the only set of tracks, to give you one more hint. There's only one individual animal walking down this road with this track. So if you think you might know what it is, you can send your answer through to hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or to questions@wildearth.tv, and let's see if we can catch you guys out on what track that might be. Although I'm starting to think it might actually be impossible to catch you all out. Oh, the flies are definitely here.
Wow.
Oh,
This is ridiculous.
they are back with a vengeance. And it isn't even summer yet. It hasn't even rained yet. So let's see if you can answer my question on that particular track as we continue our way to Buffelshoek Dam. I found a log. It's okay, we've escaped over it. And we were chatting a little bit about the various antelope species, and we have been doing a little bit on the differences between the various antelope species. And Maggie, welcome to the Sunrise Safari. You wanted to know what the difference is between a springbok and a Thompson's gazelle. And I am going to attempt to answer that question with pictures once I get to Buffelshoek Dam. But I will say that one of the most important differences is actually distribution. So as far as I know, there's not much overlap in terms of where you find springbok, which is to the west of our country. You find them around the Karoo, around the Green Kalahari or the Southern Kalahari, and towards the Western Cape, the Western and Northern Cape. And Thompson's gazelle tend to be situated further up towards East and Central Africa. So we will chat a little bit about the physical differences as well. To the best of my knowledge, Thompson's gazelle are a little bit taller, a little bit longer in terms of size, but I will just double check that in a moment, and we can have quite a long discussion about that. And don't forget, I'm still very keen to hear who's got that question about that track correct. They're still all the way continuing up this road. about the tracking, and I spoke yesterday afternoon about the way that buffalo hooves are structured and how antelope hooves are structured as well, in terms of having those two toes forming those joint hoof position. And we do have a question about which whether or not the North American deer, whether their tracks will differ in any way from our antelope tracks. And Dave, I'm not sure in terms of their tracks, because I've actually never been up to that side of the country, so I've never seen the tracks. However, I would say that the differences are probably minimal in terms of, at very least, having that same structure with the two hoof, the cloven hoof sort of positioning of the track. However, bear in mind that even with our antelope species here, we can tell the difference between each and every single species track, despite the fact that the sort of general structure is completely the same. They will all have their own unique curves. Some of the antelope are wider in the center of the track, some of them are wider at the base of the track, some of them have straight edges, some of them have round edges, and so on and so forth. So it can actually be quite the art form to even differentiate between the different species. So we do definitely know that we would be able to tell the difference between the deer and the antelope that we have here. It's just a matter of looking at the general structure will be very similar. I might have caught you guys out on that particular track, and there have been lots and lots of different answers in terms of what it might have been. I just stopped to have a look at these tracks, but I'm going to leave them for now. So the correct answer to my mystery track was a white-tailed mongoose. And I will explain to you why I came to that conclusion in a moment. So lots and lots of people guessing civet, honey badger, porcupine, serval, all kinds of things along those lines. So I think we might actually have caught you out on that one. And let me explain to you one of the most important features, and I did give it away. In terms of size, it was tiny. It's tinier than a porcupine, which I actually think I've got on the road here at the moment. I'm going to try and show you. It is tinier than a porcupine. It is less round than a civet, although it is quite similar in size to a civet, maybe slightly smaller. Geez, flies, go away. Okay, the porcupine track I did have is ducked off the road. I'm not going to go too far back in terms of finding it again. Okay, so let me just stop the car so I can concentrate on explaining this difference. Most important thing that I was taught in terms of tracking, if you're looking at a mongoose track, you look for the asymmetrical back pad, which is why I said to you that the one back pad is slightly extended on the one side than the other. Now you do get that in porcupine and honey badger tracks. They do have that slightly asymmetrical look because they are in some way, especially with a honey badger, they are fairly closely related to the honey badger, which is why their tracks look similar, but much, much, much smaller. Then in terms of the fact that the claws were out, it was solitary, all of those are a little bit of hints in terms of how, or at least which animal made that track. Serval tracks are cat tracks. They're nice and neat with the usual 3 lobes at the back of the pad, you can see, but a little bit bigger. Caracal also a little bit bigger. With mongoose, you then look at that asymmetrical back pad is the most important, and then you also look at how many... Thanks, Andrew. You look at how many individuals there are. So it's a solitary little animal, it's nocturnal, and there's no kind of drag marks of quills. The tracks are fairly tiny, they're about this big, as opposed to porcupine or honey badger tracks, which are about this big in length. So I think we might have caught you out. However, I'm sure that you are wondering what Stef has been up to whilst he's disappeared off into Arethusa. Maggie, I haven't forgotten your question. I will make sure that I get those pages up and ready to show you the differences between the Thompsons and the Springbok. However, for now, we are going to cut across to Stef, and I will be back with you a little bit later.
And from one tracking exercise to another, we are hot on the tracks of a female leopard here at Arethusa. Myself and Brian came down here, and we've been trying to keep everyone updated through all the gremlins, and unfortunately it's just been a bit rocky this morning from that point of view. But nonetheless, why we're standing by where we are now is that while I was out the car tracking these fresh tracks of this female leopard coming into this area, all of a sudden Impala started to give alarm calling just off to our right hand side. And although it's not in the direct line of where the tracks were, there has been reports of two leopard in this area, a male and a female. We don't quite know whether it's the Kwatile female or whether it's Shadow, but definitely female tracks, not the biggest female tracks I've ever seen, and a male's tracks, although the male's tracks weren't as fresh. So myself and an Arethusa ranger, Cedric, have come into this area to see what we can find. They've gone on foot and with a tracker to go and have a look and see what they can see, and we are standing by here to hear what they have to say when they get back. For two reasons. One is that when we drive we seem to lose you, and two is I really want to hear what Cedric has to say when he gets back with his tracker to see what's been going on, what tracks are in the area where these impala have been giving their alarm calls. Now, I know this morning's been a pretty frustrating morning for the viewers who are used to seeing lion and leopard and elephant jumping out of every bush. This is just one of those days where we tend to be tracking a bit more than what we do in other days, and it's just how it goes out here, you know. We'd get very, very bored if all we did was just drive out of the lodge into sightings, and we'd be spoiled, really, to be honest. So it's sometimes good to apply your mind and apply your brain to everything that we're doing out here. And that also gives us a chance to interact a little bit more with you, answer some questions about us and about what we're doing out here and about how we get this all right, you know. Beautiful day, actually. So while we're having a look at the bush around us, I'd like to answer a question from Jim in California from a bit earlier when we were doing our scorpion track. Jim, you've asked if we have a summer, or 4 seasons really, summer, autumn, spring and winter, rather than a wet and a dry season like you have closer to the equator, or a summer and a winter, I presume you were suggesting. At the moment, we are in just the end trails of winter. Officially, our spring starts on the 1st of September, and we'll have quite a short spring. It's really probably 1st of September until the 1st of November, I would say, is our spring. And then from the 1st of November until about the 1st of April would be summer. 1st of April to the 1st of June would be autumn, and then 1st of June all the way through to the 1st of September would be our winter. That's how I have it. I mean, it's not everyone has their own opinion. That's just me living out here in the Kruger National Park. That's where I see the biggest seasonal changes. And what we can expect to see now is a carry-on of the dry period. We're not going to be seeing much in the form of rain here until at least the middle of October sometime. And then it gets very dry until December, end of November, December period. And it's in those times that the temperatures spike, but we do get a flush of grass and we get a flush of flowers coming through. And that for me is what typically is spring. Still dry, but with flowers and grass coming through. And so we definitely get 4 seasons here, just to answer your question without rambling on and getting lost in my explanation. As you get closer to the equator, the temperature between winter and summer doesn't change as much. You get a very small variation. And you only really get a wet and a dry season. So in countries like northern Botswana and Zambia, and as you go up into the equatorial belt, we there find a rainy season. You have an on-rain and you have an off-rain, and in some places like East Africa, you even have a small wet season as well. Definitely makes traveling and filming there difficult, because when I say rain, it's meters of rain a year. It's proper in the form of rain. So this area where we're having a look at the moment, just want to draw your attention to what it is. We are on the downslope portion of what we call a katina out here, and these are dominated by these guari thickets. The bush that you're busy having a look at, the green one without with the leaves on, is a magic guari, or the Euclea divinorum. It is a tree that typically grows just above a drainage line and just below a seep line. And for those who watch the show quite often, you'll note that at this time of the year we find a lot of buffalo, a lot of zebra on seep lines, which isn't too much of a problem. That's the seep line is like an extended spring around a hill, and these guaris grow just below that, so not quite on the edges of drainage lines. And there's a typical guari over there with a white stem and those vibrant green leaves, quite hard leathery leaves with a lot of tannin in them. Humans use the trees themselves. The berries are nice and edible. The bark, the inner bark, produces a very nice tannic acid, which we use for tanning leather. The roots make quite a nice purple dye for dyeing baskets, and like a purplish brownish dye for dyeing baskets and hats. And the leaves are not really eaten by anything. The leaves are not really tasty at all. A lot of things like lying in them for shade. And then the tree itself, the specific name divinorum, comes from the fact that a forked stick of this particular tree is believed to be able to point out water. I mean, I've actually seen it being done before, to my amazement, and I'm quite an analytical guy. I didn't really believe what I was seeing, but I watched this stick behave in my hands like I've never seen anything behave in my life. It definitely pointed down. We definitely drilled there, and we definitely found water. So, believe what you want. That is the facts. At least according to my brain. You can see it's quite thick. These areas are typically inhabited by leopard. It's not an uncommon place to find leopard in these thickets. They enjoy the cover, I think, that it gives them. And then also these areas are quite often inhabited by impala herds. We've got 2 dead knobthorns. Have a look at that. Big blue sky today. It is a fantastic day. Not too hot just yet, although I can feel that we're going to be singing by 1-2 o'clock this afternoon. Alright, so Cedric's back. We're just going to get a quick update. I'm going to be speaking to someone off camera, and I'll let you know what the story is now.
It looks a male and female leopard, fresh, going across the power line.
Okay.
Going to Safari Donga North.
Okay. So
just left Norman there. I think he also heard it.
Okay, I'll follow you.
Okay. Folks, leaving Norman, we still got some tracks going that way, but very.
Alright, so Cedric has said that he's got some fresh tracks of a male leopard. and a female. We're going to be following Cedric in that direction and see if we can pick him up. Cedric, it's just up next left, eh?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, cool. Okay. So Cedric has a tracker, and these guys are really fantastically skilled at deciphering tracks. Where I just had a fresh track on the road and I could tell that it was a fresh track. He's able to decipher a trail through this bush and actually follow it. You know, in all the years that I've been working out here, my respect for these trackers has just grown. Every single year it grows more and more. So we're just going to be following Cedric down the road. There's only so many roads over here, but not too far. I can actually see the power line that he was talking about in the distance. We've got a bit of dust on the lens. It's just Brian's finger that's cleaning it. So let's just keep him in sight. He's got radio comms with his tracker. So Carol has just asked us a question while we're driving away and into these thickets. Do giraffe eat guarri leaves? Carol, I've never seen anything eat a guarri in my life. I've chewed on a couple of leaves. They dry out your mouth like you can't believe. But no, I haven't seen anything eat it. It would be interesting to find out if they do, and in what conditions they'd eat it as well. So we've still got Cedric. We're tracking Cedric now at the moment. That should be pretty easy to do, although famous last words from Stefan, I must never make predictions. They always end up being absolutely the opposite to what I'm predicting. All right, it's definitely not where we track those those female tracks from. Those tracks definitely came further up the road. But you know, you never know. They could have made a loop. Anything's possible. Our eyes peeled here. I don't think these tracks came this far down. Let's leave the tracker on those tracks, that's the key. Going down this road over here, following Cedric. He's in radio communications with his tracker. He's still on the trail. We might have to go off-road here at this stage to meet his tracker in the bush. But this is all about it. This is what it is. hot on the trail of something here. Alerted to the fact by tracks, alerted to the fact that we had impala barking and making a noise in this area. Something is here, something is alarming the animals, something is giving us an indication that there's a predator in the area, and that really need. So that is Cedric in the front there. You can see him just off the distance. It's actually the brother of a friend of mine who I started guiding with 16 years ago. Can you believe it? First time I saw Cedric, he was still in primary school. Now he's a full-on game ranger. Now we're slowing down. This is in the line that we thought that these animals were calling. Good idea just to switch off and listen. Hear anything. That doesn't mean much. I have got an earphone blocking out half of my hearing on the one side, and then my sinus from this change of the season, a little bit of hay fever, is blocking out 3/4 of the other. So this area with all these drainage lines, perfect leopard habitat. Across though, I must be honest. If it were me, I would be a little bit further to the south. I have got some significant game trails here. Need to switch off again. Always a good idea just to switch off and listen as often as possible. Got some francolins making there's a nyala there. We've also got some francolins making an alarm call. There's a crested francolin. Yeah. That was exactly the alarm call. Are we talking about just Franklin's all of a sudden taking flight? One more Franklin. I still think that we are following two different leopard here, that the tracks that we had a little bit earlier are from a different female leopard to the one that this tracker and Cedric are following. They just seem to be fresh and in the same place. Than not, it's exactly what we're doing now. We're following a bunch of clues and we're putting the clues together, trying to draw a picture in our minds of what's going on. And sometimes it results in us finding something, sometimes it results in one of our colleagues finding something. And sometimes we're lucky and we just bump into something on the road. But the bush here is big. Lots of spaces for these highly camouflaged cats to hide away in. But perseverance pays off. Just had a report from Cedric that his tracker is still on the tracks of a male and female leopard. Just having a look at this game path. See if they haven't crossed over. Keeping my eyes peeled in every place that I can possibly think that a leopard might be, underneath bushes, lying on open patches in the shade, in trees. Going to be bypassing Cedric and carrying on. He's going to stop in this area and he's going to be listening to the bush around him. We're going to carry on and see if we can bump into this. Alright, Cedric.
I'm going to leave my lander still on yeah. I'm going to quickly jump for
It's okay. Good stuff.
I'm going to keep my radio on, keep anything on.
See you in a bit.
Let's go. We have power lines up and down. Looks like you said, it looked like there was landing some llamas on that side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. Ciao. Bye. All right, folks. That was just a quick update from Cedric's tracker. He has radio communications with Cedric's tracker. I don't. But it doesn't mean too much. Now we're getting back into the area here with these drainage lines that I think these animals are close to. I don't think we're too far away from these tracks at all, or from these cats at all, I should say. If anything, they're driving circles around us today. But just keep on going. Back into these guarri thickets again, which is pretty prime leopard habitat. It's nice and open. That's what you want. Okay, got these leopard tracks here. Right, so we've got leopard tracks on the floor here of a male leopard. Let's see where he goes. I'm just scanning the road to see where he left the road.
Welcome back, and we do apologize for that somewhat rude interruption. I know that Stef is on fresh leopard tracks, which is very, very exciting news. I can't say the same for us. We went and checked Buffelshoek Dam. Not much around that side. So we're just checking very carefully along the Buffelshoek boundary. Keen to see if Karula's going to make an appearance at some point soon. She was seen around one of the dams a couple of days ago. It doesn't look as though she's come in our direction. And it has been, as Stef mentioned, one of those quiet mornings out here in the bush, but of course we can't have too much excitement, otherwise we wouldn't have too much work to do. Just while I'm here, and I have remembered, before I forget, to get back to Maggie's question. So, Maggie, you asked about the differences between springbok and Thompson's gazelle, and unfortunately I don't have my book here that has a really nice picture of a Thompson's gazelle, and that's because I only happen to have a book on southern African mammals. So I've got a picture of a steenbok I've got steenboks on the brain. A springbok that I can show you. So here is our picture of a springbok for those of you who are unfamiliar or might be new viewers. And it is one of our favorite animals here in South Africa. It is our rugby team is named after them. And as far as I know, it is our national animal. And it does do that incredible pronking motion that is completely unique to springbok. And although this picture doesn't show it too clearly, that stripe is actually very, very clear on springbok. So if I can just have a look, I'm going to see if I can find the map for you, which was somewhere on 627, 628. There we go. This is what I wanted to show you. So here we've got a distribution map of the springbok, and they do extend a little bit further down into South Africa, which is here. So this is the general range of a springbok, and the Thompson's gazelle tends to be more isolated to around that area. So Eastern and Central Africa, around Tanzania and Kenya. So Maggie, I hope that helps to clear things up. Unfortunately, I don't happen to have the picture of the Thompson's gazelle that I was looking for. I don't have that particular book with me at the moment. But it is mainly distribution, and then Thompson's gazelle, I think, do tend to be just a little bit lankier. But springbok are really quite amazing animals. That pronking motion that they do it's totally unique to springbok, and they jump up into the air and they arch their backs and they draw all sort of four legs together and the most amazing motion. And the reason that they do that, and it's done by a couple of different, or most of the antelope do that, some kind of energetic demonstration. It's known as stotting. Just that particular unique one is unique to springboks, is the pronking motion. And it's a way of showing predators and other antelope and other competitors how very healthy and full of energy they are. Impala do it as well. They do this amazing handstand motion. And then things like Sesame, wildebeest, they'll actually put their heads up and do a very high trotting motion. So all of the antelope do it, but springbok in particular have one of the most spectacular pronking displays. So Maggie, I hope that helps a little bit. I will definitely be having a look around for my book with a picture of a Thompson's gazelle. Unfortunately, it's not on Jigger with me at the moment. But we shall continue our search for different animals to show you. It's definitely got much, much warmer very quickly this morning. And the flies have certainly been an irritation. We had a bit of a suggestion or a conversation between Andrew and myself that maybe we should just continue this at sort of 60 kilometers an hour, third gear all the way, and not stop for anything, just to try and escape the flies, which of course we won't do, but they are particularly out and about at the moment. The subject of flies that are plaguing both Andrew and myself, Zai, you suggested that we get our own personal oxpecker. I think that is a fantastic idea. I think Andrew and myself should both take one and train it up to sit on our heads and catch the flies and the ticks that might come our way. And I've actually got a really, really interesting question from Sibusiso, aka the Black Mamba. Welcome as always to our sunrise safari, and you were wondering if there's any plants that act as a sort of a fly repellent, and that's actually a really, really good question, and something I just happened to coincidentally be reading about last night. So I was reading about the various naturally occurring crop plants, so the mazes, the sorghums, all of those kind of seed-like plants that are then ground up and made into flour and maize. And obviously by the various rural people throughout the years in South Africa, they've learned to cultivate and to look after and to farm. And I was reading about a type of aloe mixture that they use to spray on the crops to get rid of any kind of flies and other parasites. So, Sibusiso, I think that's a fantastic idea. I might read up a little bit more about that and possibly invest in some aloe type mixture to help keep them away. You can, I mean, we know about citronella candles and citronella oils being burned to help keep away mosquitoes. I don't think it works too well with flies. But perhaps having a further read up on that aloe mixture that was mentioned in the book I was reading last night would be a good way to address this particular problem. Started the sunrise safari looking for hyena tracks and sort of fresh evidence of where that new den might be. And Carol, you were wondering if I've managed to find it yet. The answer is unfortunately no. It's not any of the abandoned sites that we know that the hyenas have used in the past. They haven't seemed to move into there. And that particular area just has so many potential termite mounds that might be a spotted hyena den that I haven't yet managed to locate them. And the difficulty is now as well is that we've only got the two presenters on the ground at the moment, so we can't have our tracking team out and about as we usually would. And I want to be able to either get there early in the morning or late at night to try and see where they've gone. And unfortunately, we haven't had any hyena activity while I've been out on the sunrise safari. They are tucked away somewhere. It's just a matter of trying to figure out where they've gone. But I will be keeping my eye open. I'm very, very keen to see that little cub again. Did bring us, or she at least, did bring us quite a bit of enjoyment over the weeks that we did know where that den was. So I'm very, very keen to find them. Just stopping to have a look at a couple of kudu that are just browsing about in this area. Got a tiny little male. You can see just his horns starting to sprout up from those growth plates that I was talking about earlier. And I know I was asked a question a while back about whether or not it actually sort of irritates the skin or feels a bit odd when the antelope first start to grow their horns, if it sort of itches, or if it's almost like teething in the same way human babies get irritable and whiny when their teeth start to break through their gums. And I imagine that it must be fairly irritating or quite an itchy, maybe a little bit sort of that itchy sore feeling when those horns start to poke through the skin. And I have seen young antelope rubbing their faces on rough bark, or rubbing the tops of their head anyway on rough bark, just to try and probably relieve that feeling as the horns start to poke through. And there's one of the adult females doing what kudu do best, which is tucking themselves away in thick vegetation. And I do just want to go back a little bit along the road because I spied some incredibly fresh elephant dung, and I want to just use it as a way of demonstrating how you can use color to give you that instant knowledge of which animal has deposited that dung, even when it has been driven over, which it has been in this case. So let me just reverse a little bit to the pile of dung that I saw. I love that smell. Fresh ellie poo. So as we can see, that dung has been thoroughly squashed, so it's lost its obvious shape, but it does have quite a nice orangey tinge to it. It's sort of a combination of orange and green, and that's very, very clearly indicative of an elephant, fresh elephant dung that has just been deposited, and it's partly a result of all of the bark that they eat. I'm just going to hop off and grab a handful, and let's have a look through and see what we can learn about this particular elephant. So, nice and damp. It's not warm, which tells me that this was probably from last night, but it is still very, very damp. This is quite a well hydrated elephant, if I can put it that way. But still cold. And it's always important when you're tracking and you're trying to age, go away flies, you're trying to age the dung that you see. It's important that you break it open and you have a feel in the middle of the dung, just to see if there's any warmth to it. So this particular ellie, we can't learn too much about it. It's quite, judging by the tracks that are next to this dung pile, it's probably a large female. And she's been eating grass and leaves, not actually quite a lot of grass, more than I expected to find at this time of year. And probably, although she's an adult female, this is quite well chewed and quite well digested, so her teeth are in very, very good condition. She's definitely worked her way through fairly effectively, and probably in that case not an old elephant, so not an elephant that might be struggling with her teeth being worn down. Okay, so just a brief lesson on determining what species and how fresh the dung is. I'm going to return it to the environment for the termites and the flies to start working on. Yum. Definitely a very well hydrated elephant. That was nice and moist. Sorry, Andrew, you now have to put up with the smell. I happen to really like that smell. No, fly, go away. I probably haven't helped my fly situation, but maybe I might have helped Andrews. They might now start to target me a little bit more.
Yes.
So, back onto the road and to continue our search for whatever's around this area. Actually one of my favorite areas of the reserve, just where the Mwati, the very large drainage line, crosses into Djuma and makes its way into that incredible network of drainage lines that we had towards where the buffalo carcass was. Definitely one of my favorite areas. While I am making my way down along my favorite drainage line in Djuma, I just have to make a little bit of a decision as to whereabouts we go from here. I don't have any tracks to follow up on, but we're going to just check along. And this, of course, drainage lines are a really, really good place to have a look and just look for leopards. It's a great place for them to hide, nice thick vegetation. Unfortunately, it does make life a little bit more difficult because they do hide themselves away very efficiently. I'm going to do what I do every single time I come across this jackalberry tree, which is to go and check underneath it, because law of averages, at some point, surely while I'm working here, there must be a leopard. Oh, there isn't a leopard, but there is an eagle owl. I'm not going to get too much closer. I don't want to scare him away. Here we go. Tucked away just in the back there. So not a leopard, but we've actually got 2 eagle owls. I'm going to stay here for the moment. I don't want to disturb the other one. I can see it from my angle. Unfortunately, you can't. But I don't want to frighten them away. They were a little bit unsettled by my approach because they were a bit of a surprise. But we've actually got a mated pair of Varro's eagle owls. Definitely one of my favorite owls. Incredible, incredible birds. They've got that big, big size to them. And I was reading some interesting information. It was actually, I wasn't reading it, sorry. I was working with a researcher who was looking into hooded vulture nesting activity, and we bumped into a pair of nesting Varro's eagle owl. And she told me that one pair of these birds, they're very, very territorial. They can actually have a territory that stretches 4 kilometers along a riverbed area, which is quite phenomenal when you think about it. And we were lucky enough a couple of weeks ago to have one kill a guinea fowl just right by the campfire that we were sitting at. So quite extraordinary birds. One of the largest ones that we get in this area. In fact, the largest owl, hence the name eagle owl. And also one of my favorite owl calls. It's a very low, very soft doot, 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 doot. It's an awesome sound. I'm going to try and shift a little bit so that we can see the other one, just so that you know there are 2. And it always amazes me how incredibly disapproving eagle owls can look. Nope. Flying off, unfortunately. Not too far away, but decided that he didn't want to stick around for us to see, maybe just a little bit camera shy. But his or her mate, it was hard to tell. The eagle owls have the same dimorphism as in all raptors, so the female will be larger than the male. Unfortunately, we didn't see them sitting down next to each other, so it's hard to tell which one is which in this particular case. Oh, these fires are really quite spectacular. And just settling down to spend the day in this jackalberry tree, which is one of their favorite perching or roosting areas. They love this tree, and you can see why. It's got a very thick, very dark canopy. A great place to hide yourself away if you are a nocturnal bird. And owls really are the most phenomenal birds. Now those ear tufts that we could see on the top of its head, those are not actually the ears. The auditory canals, the sort of auditory openings, are situated further down on the side of the head, and they are, I'll just grab a picture for you in a moment so that I can explain this a little bit more fully. Here you can see the little tufts of feathers at the top of the head, and as I said, those are not actually the ears. They've got openings on either side of their head, but at different heights, situated at different heights on each side of the head, and that allows them to get a really, really good grasp. The flies keep flying into my mouth every time I speak. A really good grasp of where a sound is coming from. So if you can imagine hearing it, almost three-dimensional impression of sounds, and it just is what helps to make them such efficient hunters. We can hear some tiny little bird is alarm calling at their presence. I can't actually see where it is. But just making it known that it has seen them and disapproves of them. Here we go. And the owl could not be less concerned. Here we go, it's a little Retz's helmet shrike, which is very cool. I actually haven't managed to see them properly recently, but that was a Retz's helmet shrike. There will probably be a group of them around here. They are sociable birds, and it's snapping away at the presence of this eagle owl, just letting everybody in the vicinity know. And obviously that's a very good strategy to have, because eagle owls, as I mentioned before, are very, very efficient bird hunters, especially at night. Obviously when the daytime or the diurnal birds are all sleeping in trees, then this particular menace is out and about, flying through on deadly silent wings. So yes, I've counted at least 3 Retz's helmet shrikes just hopping around the tree, letting everybody in the vicinity know that there are eagle owls around. So I think it is time for us to leave this particular owl to his or her sleep for the rest of the day. Very, very cool though. Wasn't what I was expecting to see, but still quite a nice sighting. However, the flies have found us once again, and every time I try to speak or open my mouth or breathe or hear or conduct any other of my sensory functions, they find a way to interrupt them. So I think it's time for us to go, and we shall loop back towards the dam, see if we can pick up any tracks in this area. But really, really cool. Nice to see an eagle owl out in the open. Earlier we were talking about we were having a look at the elephant dung and talking about how this particular elephant had managed to chew her food fairly successfully, but you can still see how much of that remained undigested plant material. We could pretty much, if we really wanted to, we could sit and dissect it and have a look around at what she'd been eating. And Edward made the comment how amazing it is that they reach such enormous sizes by having such an inefficient digestive system. And that's a very good point, because they do excrete almost half of what they consume in a 24-hour period. We've just stopped to look at this Batelea, who unfortunately is definitely not coming in our direction again, but it might circle back around and we can have a look. Always wonderful to see, and I absolutely cannot go past a batalier and not stop and have a look at whether it's a male or a female. It's one of the few raptors where you can immediately see sexual dimorphism. You can tell the difference between the males and the females. Hoping it's going to loop back around towards us. But it looks as though he, in this particular case, is moving off. And the reason that I know it's a he is the underside of the wings, half black, half white. So quite a significant black portion makes it a male batalier. quite ridiculous this morning. Whereas females have almost totally white underside of their wings with just a thin little fringe of black along the outside edge. So that was a male batalier that was soaring around. So I'm going to continue with Edward's comment about elephants and how amazing it is that they reach such an enormous size with such an inefficient digestive system. And that is a really good point. They do reach that enormous size on a very vegetarian-based diet, obviously, and that's because they do need to consume such an enormous amount of food. And the only food option available in such enormous quantities is plant life out here. Obviously, as we can see, we are very much dominated by trees and grasses in terms of biotic life forms. But the one thing about that inefficient digestive system, it operates regardless of the quality of the food, which makes them very, very resilient particularly where the quality of food is not that great, especially at dry times of the year such as this. So they can consume enormous amounts to try and get that nutrition that they need out of the plants. It might not be the most efficient way, but it is the most rapid way that they can ingest as much food as possible and squeeze out as much nutrition as they can. So it just makes them a little bit more resilient than some of the ruminants in terms of digesting or in terms of obtaining the amount of nutrients they need, especially in desert, for example, environments. Pile of elephant dung that we were playing with, I mentioned that it was particularly high in a water content. And Raisa has told me that in the past, one of the previous presenters actually wrapped elephant dung in a cloth and squeezed it to get the liquid out in order to help you obtain some form of hydration in a survival situation. Raisa, I've never had to do that personally. I have generally tended to avoid, I would personally avoid having to do that until the absolute last minute. Although their dung is rather clean, I would not say that it is completely free of parasites. And what you really, really don't want to risk if you are in a survival situation is any kind of diarrhea or stomach complaint, because that's going to dehydrate you immensely. So at this time of year in particular, while there is some dew on the grass, I would rather take off a t-shirt or a jumper and run it through the grass and squeeze that out. So I haven't had to do that, fortunately. I would do that in a survival situation, but I would only do it at the last possible moment. I think I would prefer to track and follow.
There's a woodpecker over here.
There's a woodpecker. To track and follow the elephants to water rather than to use their dung. I'm just going to see if we can get this woodpecker back again. It's going to hop around this log, so hopefully it pokes its head out at some point. Looked to me like a bearded woodpecker, although it was a very, very quick flash of motion. Oh!
There it goes.
Off it goes. It was definitely a bearded woodpecker. And I do believe that, Georgianne, a couple of weeks ago, you asked me to show you a golden-tailed woodpecker. I haven't forgotten. I'm still keeping an eye out. And often when I'm sitting at a static sighting, I do have a good look around to see which woodpecker is tapping away in the background. So I haven't forgotten. I think it was the golden-tailed that you asked me to show. So just so that you know, I haven't forgotten. I am looking out for one. I do need to take off my jacket though, because it's incredibly warm all of a sudden. The sun has come out in full force, as have these flies. I'm going to need to master the art of learning to ignore them, and I'm not quite sure how one does that. I know that Scott in particular is very, very good at pretending they aren't there. I'm afraid I don't share that same tolerance just yet. So guys, I'm sure that you've been wondering what Stef has been up to, and you want to know how his tracking of the elusive leopards is going. So for now, we're going to cross back across to Stef, and we will be back with you a little bit later.
And this is something that we don't see too often, but this is a grey duiker. And as far as I saw, there were 3 of them here. There might be another one there. This is a dwarf antelope. And one of the 4 dwarf antelopes that we find in this area of the Kruger National Park. This is a female. Characterized by the lack of horns. And how I knew it was a grey duiker was that short little crest between the ears and the black stripe running up the nose. That's how we knew it was a grey duiker. I just want to go forward a little bit. There was definitely another one there, and if I wasn't mistaken, there was also a 3rd face there, which would mean it's a pair with a youngster. Very uncommon to see. But let me go forward a little bit and see. Or just my eyes playing tricks on me, which is very possible. Forward a little bit more. See, he's laid down there immediately. Disappeared in the grass. Let's see if you can see it. Just see a pair of ears there. Isn't that absolutely spectacular camouflage working? Wow, that is amazing. And that is their first line of defense. So their first line of defense is to hide away. Their second line of defense is to run. They're obviously not very fast. They do make a delicious meal for a leopard. Shadow in particular is quite good at hunting grey duiker. He's killed a number of them over the last few weeks. There, you can see that one hiding over there now, but just laid down. Sorry about that, Brian. Come to me, going away. Yeah, that female is lying down over there in the grass. common or grey duiker. Quite a primitive antelope species and very widespread. You find them literally from semi-desert areas all the way into the equatorial jungles. They're quite a widespread group of antelope. Let's leave this one. We are on the tracks of a female leopard that has come into this area. We had very fresh tracks a little bit earlier, just before we got sidetracked by those impala busy giving their alarm calls. Not too much of a problem that they did that. We thought that it was them that may have looped back. But the only tracks that I could find that were fresh in the area was of a male leopard. And so we left Cedric on the male leopard's tracks, and we've come back onto the female leopard's tracks. I thought that would be, or prove to be, a little bit easier for us to find, considering that we don't have a tracker with us. Nevertheless, it's been a pretty weird morning, full of birds, full of tracking, lions roaring from the Manyeleti, impalas barking but no leopard. One of those days. My gut feels telling me that that this female leopard's actually still in that block. No fresh tracks come out of that block unless they've crossed the road somewhere that I didn't see. Means that I'm going to be doing another pass through that area and double checking every termite mound that I can. We have been seeing Sindile lying up on termite mounds the last few times that I've seen him, and it may begin to give us a clue of where to start looking for shadow if the female's tracks that we saw were shadows. Double checking all of the inside corners of the road. Back into the area where her tracks were last seen. Quite a thickly bushed area. Some leopard tracks coming down this road. Just can see. Male leopard track. the road. It doesn't look too fresh though, I must be honest. It looks from that male leopard that we had the other day. I mean, a bit earlier. So I think while I keep trekking, a good thing to do would be going to Jamie, who's got an elephant to show you. Finally, something alive and animate and big. So we'll see you in a little bit with another update. Enjoy.
So guys, welcome back, and just about 100 meters along the road after I left you and you crossed across to Stef and those sneaky leopards, we chanced upon what looks to be a young bachelor herd of elephants. So I've counted 4 individuals. They are in a very, very thick block. This is as good as we can get at the moment, but they do seem to be slowly wandering in our direction, so hopefully they come out nicely sort of towards us and into the open. But this one, who has been super relaxed while we've been here, is busy chomping away at a knobthorn. He appears to be, from what I can see, he appears to be missing a tusk. Oh, and there we go. Some of the others have made themselves known. Oh, and it is a breeding herd as well, because there is a little one moving off to the left there. There's our gentleman with the missing tusk. Probably broken it off at some point. Possibly might even have been some kind of abscess or crack in a tooth, because tusks are teeth. And it was just a little bit weaker and it broke itself off. Go, so at least we can see a couple of the members of this herd. The young males have sort of stuck together towards the outskirts. Hello, my boy. Going to come say hello? No, I'm just passing by. It's amazing to watch their different characters. The one that walked behind us was very, very relaxed from the moment we came into the sighting. This little boy, on the other hand, wasn't too sure how he felt about us. He did watch us very carefully as we came in. But I think he's going to follow his buddy along behind us. Hello, boy. And for a young male, those tusks are actually fairly impressive. He's going to be quite a big boy when he grows up. He's probably somewhere in the region of about 12 to 13 years of age. Just about at the age where he will be leaving the herd fairly soon. He is going to be he's going to have enormous tusks when he grows up. And this one looks like one of the adult females. So she's passed by with the rest of the breeding herd. I'm just judging that off the shape of her forehead, as well as those long, slightly thinner tusks. And I think typically with females, they tend to have tusks that are slightly thinner than the males do, although those are quite nice and long. She's clearly an adult elephant. So I'm thinking it is a female. I haven't been able to confirm. I can't quite see for sure. She looks to be a female. Just having a go at the grass. And these could well be the elephants that were responsible, or at least one of them was responsible for that pile of dung that we were playing around with earlier. So the male with the snapped tusk has moved off. But it is always an interesting phenomenon to observe in elephants, and it can mean different things. But Edward pointed out that the surviving tusk on that particular male also looked a little bit wonky, to use a slightly colloquial term, and I completely agree, that tusk did look wonky. And genetically, in the same way that some people are predisposed to teeth that often crack or need fillings more regularly, elephants can be exactly the same. And I stand corrected. Now that I've seen this elephant's side on, it is in fact a male, not a female. It's a young male. It can be quite tricky to tell, but that forward-facing sheath tells us that is the penis sheath, and that is a male. So I was wrong about that particular elephant. We've got a little one coming here. But yes, Edward, I agree. I think that there is a good chance that that tusk could get snagged and broken off. He probably has a congenital or a genetic slightly weaker set of tusks. Maybe nutritionally wasn't as well fed as he should have been. It's hard to tell. It's all just guesswork pretty much. But I think there is a good chance he's going to lose that tusk as well. These ellies are shifting off into quite a thick block, but I would like to stay with them. It does just mean that I might need to reposition slightly and just get us into a slightly better angle as they start to move away from us. So for now, we're going to cross back across to Stef, who has a water bug that he would love to show you. And then we will be back with these ellies for the last few moments of the sunrise safari. See you a little bit later.
And there we have the biggest mammal that myself and Brian have seen today. A big waterbuck bull. These leopards have really given us the slip today. Fresh tracks, so we guessed the area right. Very fresh tracks. Impala barking, but unfortunately no result for us today. We've just run out of time. But it was a lovely morning to start with. The sunrise was beautiful. It was good to know that the scorpions are out and about again. So once again, us trying not to walk barefoot at night time around the camp. That's exactly when most people get stung. But we'll see a gradual increase in insect activity, I'm imagining. Firstly from their tracks, and then we'll start to see them again earlier and later on. In the nights and the evening. So at least from myself and Brian, we are there we go, and the thumb makes an appearance. We just want to say thank you very much for your patience, and we're going to be out bright and early this afternoon to try and make up for lost time. See you again soon.
So guys, welcome back as we get to spend the last few minutes with this wonderful herd of Ellies. And given the proximity of this little one, I definitely haven't needed to reposition. He decided to come to me in this particular case. So we've got a little male here, probably 3.5, close to 4 years old. Their growth does start to sort of plateau and slow down after their first year of growth. But he's got his little permanent tusks starting to grow. And baby elephants do get milk tusks, but they often don't even, or not, are not even visible to the eye. And then they lose those and they start to grow their first or their permanent and only set of tusks for the rest of their life. And those will continue to grow with him. And he's tackling a sickle bush, which does have some rather nasty spines, but it doesn't seem to bother this little one. Oh, and time for some grass instead. And just using his feet to help get him into the roots that he wants to get to, help break apart the grass. And he will be imitating his mother and what he's learned from his elders in terms of swishing off the dirt that you do get. Often elephants, when they grab trunkfuls of grass, they'll beat it to the side a little bit just to clear away any of the dust and ticks. But in this case, this little one hasn't fully mastered the technique. It's just going straight into his mouth. So after the action-packed last few days, oh, mommy, wait. I want to catch up. After the action-packed last few days on Juma, it appears as though the lion interaction for now has moved across our boundaries. The Birmingham boys seem to have crossed, and it doesn't look as though the Matimbas have ventured up to the side yet. I'll be interested to see how this scenario plays out over the next few days. But nevertheless, a very interesting sunrise safari. We got to talk about a lot of the little things and the little antelope, chatted a bit about Steenbok, and just the various things that we get to see and enjoy. And of course, for me, that particular highlight of those Verreaux's eagle owls and the Ritz's helmet shrikes that were fluttering around them and just letting them know that they were highly, highly displeased with their presence in that jackalberry tree. So for the sunset safari, Stef has been hot on the tracks of these very mysterious leopards, and I'm sure he will be following up on those in the future, and probably for the sunset safari. So for now, a big thank you to Andrew for his wonderful camera work, as always, and a thank you to Tara and Jess in FC, and Eugene for jumping on and tackling those Friday morning gremlins. And of course, a big thank you to you, the viewers. We hope that you will be joining us for the sunset safari this afternoon, which will definitely be an exciting one. We will see you there. Cheers for now, guys.